Okay, picture this. It's Sunday afternoon. You're on the couch, just trying to unwind, and you put on one of those big budget nature documentaries. The camera work is just incredible. You see a lion, he's up on a rock, wind in his mane, the noble king, surveying his whole kingdom. And it cuts to dolphins, and they're surfing the waves, and they look like they're smiling. They're like the ocean's golden retrievers. It's comforting.
It is comforting. It's a really beautiful story. The problem is that story, that narrative, it pretty much only exists inside our heads, not out there, not in the wild.
Right. And that is exactly what we are tearing apart today. We're doing a deep dive into the myth of morality in nature. We have a ton of research here that basically just dismantles that whole Disney-fied view of the animal kingdom. But I want to be clear right from the top. We're not here to just, ruin your childhood memories of the Lion King. We're trying to figure out why we project our values onto animals and what really happens when we stop doing that.
Exactly. This is all about taking off the human filter.
Yeah.
We have this really deep-seated habit. It's called anthropomorphism. We just automatically attribute human traits, human emotions, intentions to things that are not human. So we see a dolphin's jaw, the shape of it, and we say, oh, it's a smile. We see a lion's sheer size, and we call it nobility. But nature doesn't operate on concepts like good or evil or innocent or cruel.
It just operates on function.
Pure function. Our brains, though, are pattern-seeking machines.
Yeah.
We evolved to survive by predicting what comes next, and the best way we know to do that is to create a story. If the lion is noble, then, okay, we think we know what to expect. If the dolphin is nice, we feel safe. But when you actually look at the raw data, that's what we're doing. The world underneath is just indifferent, it's often violent, and it's completely alien to our sense of morality.
And I think it's important to frame this right before we dive into the specific animals. We are not judging them, we are observing them. And the reason we cling to these stories, this idea of fairness in nature, it's actually rooted in our own evolution, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. For most of our history, humans weren't the narrators. We were the prey. We were slow, we were soft. No real natural weapons to speak of. We survived by outthinking everything around us. Now that we've, build civilization and basically taken ourselves off the menu, we have the luxury of looking back and romanticizing nature. We want to believe the world we came from is orderly and fair because the alternative that it's just random and ruthless, that's existentially terrifying.
We need the world to be a story we can understand, but the data says it's messy. So let's get into the mess. And we have to start with the poster child for ocean friendliness and intelligence, the dolphin.
The dolphin is the perfect place to start. The gap between the public image and the biological reality is just massive.
Everyone knows they're smart, but we tend to equate smart with moral, don't we? We assume that because they have these complex brains, they must have something like our conscience. But the research, it paints a picture of a society that is incredibly political and, to be honest, coercive.
Political is a great word for it. Dolphin society, especially with bottlenose dolphins, it's all defined by this intense competition for status and for access to females. The male alliances, they're often called gangs or coalitions in the research. They are not just buddies hanging out. They are strategic, almost military units.
And their main goal seems to be monopolizing females. I mean, the notes describe behavior that we would legally classify as, kidnapping?
Coercion?
That's the reality of it. A coalition of males will find a female and isolate her from her pod. They surround her, they hurt her, and they physically stop her from leaving. This can go on for days, even weeks, just to make sure they have exclusive mating access. They coordinate, they cut off her escape routes. It is tactical.
And it's brutally effective. But the thing that really struck me in the research wasn't just the reproductive strategy, it was the gratuitousness of some of the violence. There are documented cases of dolphins killing harbor porpoises, not for food. It's almost like for sport.
Yeah.
Practice. It does seem to be aggression without a consumption motive. And we also see infanticide adult males killing calves. But if we look at the why in a high-stakes social world like theirs, dominance isn't about ego. It is about survival and genetic legacy. Violence is a tool. But you mentioned intelligence earlier, and that leads us to this whole other side of dolphin behavior. There's sexual complexity.
And this is where I have it in my notes here. The eel detail comes in. I think people see this headline and they just sort of cringe or laugh, but it reveals something really profound. The report mentions dolphins using living eels for, what should we call it, tactile stimulation.
Yes, that's a delicate way to put it. They're essentially using eels as tools for sexual pleasure.
And that sounds so bizarre, right? But it points to a kind of cognitive surplus. Most animals are just too busy trying not to starve to death to, invent toys.
Precisely. And that's the key takeaway. You only see this kind of behavior masturbation with objects, non-reproductive sex, interspecies stuff, and these highly intelligent animals. It requires a brain that's complex enough to feel boredom, to feel curiosity.
So the perversion, if we're going to use that word, is actually a symptom of their brilliance.
It is. A simple brain doesn't have time to get bored. A complex brain needs stimulation. So dolphins use sex for bonding, for hierarchy, and for fun. It proves they are not just biological robots. They're thinking, feeling creatures, but they're thinking and feeling in a way that has absolutely zero overlap with human morality.
And that is the cognitive disconnect right there. We see the smile, but behind it is a creature that is hyper intelligent, easily bored, and capable of extreme ruthlessness.
Correct.
Okay, let's shift gears from intelligence to what I'd call resource and reproductive anxiety. We're going to the Antarctic. Penguins. The symbol of monogamy. The movie March of the Penguins convinced a whole generation that these birds are the ultimate romantics.
It is a lovely film, but it projects a human ideal onto what is, at its core, a survival strategy.
Yeah.
Yes, penguins are serially monogamous, so they'll stay faithful for a season. But this isn't born out of love. It's born out of an energetic economic equation.
Okay, let's break down that equation. Because in an environment that cold, every single calorie has to count.
Exactly. To raise a chick in the Antarctic, you need two parents. One has to incubate the egg, the other has to go fish. If you split up, the chick dies. The bond is a necessity for your genes to succeed. But the second that equation changes, say your partner is late coming back from the sea, or a better mate shows up who looks fatter, healthier, that bond just dissolves instantly.
It's just purely pragmatic. I was reading about the divorce rates in penguin colonies. If last year's chick didn't make it, they dropped the partner immediately. No second chances.
It's immediate. They don't mourn the relationship. They have to beat the clock of the coming winter. And the colonies themselves are incredibly violent places. You've got thousands of birds jammed together, all competing for the best nesting spots. There's egg smashing, chick trampling. It's more of a riot zone than a peaceful commune.
Yeah. So the romance is really just efficient logistics. Okay. Now, from the frozen pragmatic to the deceptive, otters. This one, I think, hurts people the most. They hold hands, they float on their backs. They're the very definition of cute.
Otters are the classic example of nature's bait and switch. We look at them and our brain says playful. But biologically, otters have this ridiculously high metabolism. They're constantly on the verge of starving. And that creates an animal that is aggressive, territorial, and frankly desperate.
And that desperation leads to some behaviors that are truly Machiavellian, the ransom behavior specifically.
This is a tough one to hear, but it is a documented strategy. Male otters have been observed grabbing pups' babies and holding them underwater, or they'll just drag them around to coerce the mother. They use the pup as leverage to force the female to give up food she's caught, or sometimes even to force mating.
It's a hostage situation.
It is, and it works. It works because the mother's biological imperative to protect her offspring is so powerful, the male just exploits that.
That's the part that gets me. It's not just violence, it's psychological leverage. It implies the male understands the value the mother places on that pup.
It suggests a theory of mind, yes.
Yeah.
He knows that she cares, and he uses her caring against her. So again, it just destroys that innocent label. The otter looks cute because it has big eyes and soft fur, but inside it's a desperate predator willing to use hostage tactics to get a calorie surplus.
All right, let's talk about the king, the lion. We see the pride as this family unit with a noble father protecting everyone. But the biology of a pride takeover is, well, it's horrific. Right? There's a very specific biological reason driving it, right? It's not just cruelty for cruelty's sake.
This is one of the most misunderstood parts of lion behavior. When a new coalition of males overthrows the current leader, the very first thing they do is kill all the cubs. To us, that is the ultimate act of evil. But you have to look at the physiology of the female lion to understand it.
This is the lactation amenorrhea factor.
Precisely. As long as a lioness is nursing her cubs, her body produces hormones that suppress ovulation. She can't get pregnant. These new males, they have a really limited window of time, maybe 2 years, before they get overthrown themselves. They cannot afford to wait for another male's cubs to grow up.
So by killing the cubs, they are physically hitting a reset button on the female's biological clock.
Yes. The end of nursing triggers her body to go into heat almost immediately. This lets the new males sire their own offspring and carry on their genetic line. It's a brutal calculation, but from an evolutionary point of view, it is the only strategy that works to ensure the new males pass on their DNA.
And the females, they don't fight to the death to stop this.
Oh, they'll try to defend the cubs. And sometimes they're successful. But once the cubs are gone, they mate with the killers. And again, this isn't betrayal, it's survival. If she refuses to mate, her genes die out too. She has to cut her losses and invest in the next generation with the males who are currently in charge.
It's an arms race. The males are racing against time. The females are racing against mortality. And there's no room for sentimentality.
Not at all. The king isn't a protector. He's a temporary warlord who's trying to imprint his genetics before he gets deposed and left to die alone.
Wow. Okay, we've covered mammals, which we identify with because, they have faces we recognize. But I want to pivot to the insect world. Ants. We love to use ants as a metaphor for industry, for teamwork. But if you actually zoom in, the ant world is essentially an industrial dystopian nightmare.
It really is. If mammals are about individual violence, ants are about systemic oppression. The source material highlights slave-making ants, like the Polyergus species.
And this isn't just they make them work. There's a chemical component here that I think is just crucial to understanding how nature actually works.
Right. Ants don't have a sense of self like we do. Their identity is chemical. They recognize their nestmates by the hydrocarbons on their exoskeletons. It's like a pheromone passport. So these slave-making ants, they raid a rival colony, they steal the pupa, the developing ants, and they bring them back to their own nest.
And when those stolen ants hatch,
the imprint on the scent of the slave maker colony, they literally do not know they are slaves. Their chemical programming tells them, this is home, these are my sisters. So they work tirelessly, they forage, they feed the very ants that murdered their biological family.
That is terrifying because it's so mechanical. It's like hacking a computer. You just change the code, the scent, and the hardware runs the new program without question.
It just highlights that nature's completely indifferent to concepts like freedom or identity. It's just chemistry and stimulus response. And this brings us to maybe the biggest philosophical trap we all fall into, the naturalistic fallacy.
The idea that if something is natural, it must be good.
Exactly. You see it in marketing all the time. It's all natural, so it must be good for you. But as we've just seen, slavery is natural. Infanticide is natural. Coercive mating is natural. If we actually use nature as our moral compass, our society would be absolutely monstrous.
So if nature includes all of these things, we have to ask the big question, is nature evil?
No. And this is the hardest pivot for people to make. Evil requires agency. It requires knowing the difference between right and wrong and then choosing wrong.
A lion doesn't have a concept of wrong.
Not at all. When a lion kills a cub, he isn't being malicious. He is following a biological imperative. There is no judge, no jury, no conscience. There's only cause and effect. Evil is a human concept that we try to paste onto a system that doesn't have the hardware to even run that software.
It's like being mad at an earthquake. An earthquake isn't mean, it's just plate tectonics.
That's a perfect analogy. Pain, suffering, death in nature. These aren't flaws in the design. They are features of the system. They are the feedback loops that drive evolution. Without the cruelty of the predator, the prey doesn't evolve speed or camouflage. The whole system relies on this constant friction.
Which connects to that point in the notes about a creator. We often ask, how could a good creator make such a cruel world? But the argument is that we're judging the machine by the wrong metrics.
Right. We judge the universe by the metric of human comfort or justice. But the universe seems to be designed for functionality and complexity. It's a self-correcting system. It's not there to be nice to us. It's there to work. And it works beautifully. But the fuel for that engine is very often the suffering of individuals.
That's a heavy realization. We're basically looking at a beautiful, intricate machine that runs on blood. So where does that leave us? We've stripped away the fairy tale. We know the dolphin is a political operator. The otter is a kidnapper. The ant is a chemical slave owner. It feels kind of bleak.
I don't think it's bleak. I actually think it's clarifying. And honestly, I find it incredibly empowering for us, for humans.
How so?
Because we are the exception. We seem to be the only species that can look at this entire system and say no.
We can defy the programming.
Think about it. We have the same biological drives as these animals. We have the drive to dominate, to hoard resources, to eliminate rivals. That's all in our reptilian brain.
Yeah.
But we've built this other layer on top of it, a moral mind that values things like mercy and justice and protecting the weak.
So when we protect the vulnerable or when we create laws against violence, we're not just being nice, we're actively fighting against millions of years of evolutionary pressure.
We are rebelling against nature. Nature dictates that the strong eat the weak. Humanity, at its absolute best, dictates that the strong protect the weak. And that is a uniquely human achievement. We are the only part of the universe, as far as we know, that creates a concept like justice and then actually tries to live by it.
That completely flips the script. So instead of looking to nature to tell us how to live, we should realize that being human means choosing not to live like nature.
Precisely. We shouldn't demonize nature, it's just doing what it does. But we should never idealize it either. We should appreciate it for its incredible complexity, but recognize that our values, love, mercy, fairness, these are things we have to build and maintain in spite of our biology.
It's like defying the default setting. I really love that concept. It makes every act of kindness feel, revolutionary.
It is. It's an act of defiance against the indifference of the entire universe.
So for everyone listening, the next time you're watching that documentary and you see the lion bring down the gazelle, don't turn away. Admire the efficiency, respect the survival, but then appreciate the fact that you, sitting there on your couch, have the capacity to choose a totally different path. You can choose to be kind in a world that absolutely does not require it. So here's a final thought for you to mull over. If morality is a purely human invention, a shield we build against the harshness of the wild, does that mean that being civilized is actually the most unnatural thing we can possibly do? And is that unnaturalness actually our greatest strength?
I think it is.
Thanks for diving deep with us. See nature for what it is so you can be who you are.